Yeah, we're live. I'm actually not liking this green screen back behind there for the live feed, so I think we're going to change that for the live feed next time. But tonight we're talking about the video that I just posted, which is very cool. It's me trying to put a set of 821 heads that the guys from Summit supplied on a small bore motor. The one that I did all the filming on was the aluminum block that we had notched out. We had notched out a section of the 706 head and notched out a section of the block so we could look in there. And when I did my piston to valve demonstration and told you I'd be using that block again because we could demonstrate lots of cool things with it. And this is a perfect example. The valve is not hitting the piston, but the valve is hitting the edge of the bore. So this was an interesting video. And I came to the conclusion that as much as I want to try to run that and show how disastrous the rec port head is going to be on either a 4.8 or a 5.3, it's not going to be a good combination. And it's interesting. We're going to talk about that a lot of people came up with the conclusion that, well, yeah, it's going to shroud the valve, so it's not going to make any power. I'm like, no, that's actually not the problem. It has like 60 or 70 extra CFM. So if it shrouds it a little bit, that's not really going to be a problem. That's not going to be the issue. Lack of airflow is not going to be the reason why that's probably not going to be a good match between especially a 4.8 and a rec port head. But we'll get into that. The interesting thing is in this video, and I didn't talk about it too much in the video, but as you see, when I was going through this process, I just did it with a Dremel so that we could get clearance so that I could make the valves fit. I wasn't trying to be precise in the notching thing so that we could actually run it, because again, that block has one cylinder that's just completely destroyed. But I was just using it as a mock-up to find out it was a proof of concept thing, just to see if it was possible. And as it turned out, I'm glad we did this because it shows that we have to get pretty far over, pretty wide on the bore and fairly deep on the bore to make the valve not hit. I honestly think, and I wanted to talk more about this in the video, but this is a good place for the live feed guys because you guys are sharp guys. I think we can get, I don't think it's going to be a problem notching the block going out on the bore size. I mean, after all, a 6-liter 4-inch bore fits. So if we can notch this so that the valve thinks that in those two spots, we have a 6-inch or a 4-inch bore like a 6-liter, that should work. And that also means that we shouldn't have to go any farther out than you would on a typical 6-liter. So a 4-inch bore should allow us to do that. And a 4-inch bore should allow us to do that. We might have to notch out, a fair bit of it and not just exactly right below the valve. The problem is the valve comes in, like at an angle, let's say it comes in at an angle to the bore. So it sweeps, across the edge of the bore. It doesn't just go straight up and down where we just put a nice little valve size notch in it and call it good and we're on our way. So there's a little bit of, rigmarole that you have to go through to make it all work. But in that direction, in that plane, I think we can make that work. I think we could notch it so that, and notch it so that not only would it fit, but we would also have enough sealing surface for the gasket. Because I don't know if you guys know, and I should have showed this in the video, I should have showed this with a section of sleeve that is in that block that we notched out. You can see the sleeve thickness is one thing, but then the top ledge, where you press the sleeve in and the sleeve comes down on a shelf. There's a shelf on the top of the sleeve. And so that sticks out farther. And so that helps provide more sealing surface. So we're not going past that into the aluminum. You're not doing that on a 6-liter block, obviously. The sleeve obviously is bigger. So, but I don't think that that's going to be an issue. I think we can, I'm thinking we could get to where we need to be for the notch. The problem is the sleeve, that's an L at the top, basically where the overhang is. So if we notch that and we get into that intersection of the sleeve, because we're getting into it in one plane and also in the other plane, essentially hypotenusing the triangle there, we're cutting off the tip. So it could be that we get to where we're limiting the structural integrity of that sleeve, at least the top part of it. Not that that would stop us from running it, honestly. We probably would run it anyways. But I think we can get this direction. The direction that I'm worried about is down. In order to make the valve work with any kind of realistic lift, the one that I showed in the video was we got to where we could open the valve roughly 600 thousandths. That doesn't mean we can run a 600 lift cam because we need some clearance there. So I'd like to at least get to 650 if I was going to run a 590 or 600 lift cam, although we will have valve train deflection and probably won't get it on a 600 out of it. But if we did, we'd want to make sure that we have enough clearance to do that. The other option, if let's say we can go out in bore size enough to make the valves fit, because I kind of really want to run the rec port head on it, because it's going to, I'm thinking it's going to be awful, but what if it turns out that it's the greatest thing in the world? But I do want to run that. And I think the way that we can do that is, and Brian even suggested this as well, is, and I talked about this a little bit in the video, that I didn't think it was a good idea, because if we're going to run a rec port head, you want to have a camshaft that can take advantage of that airflow. So whether you have it on a 6.2 or a 6.0, or in our case, a silly 4.8, you'd want to have enough camshaft to help the thing, to help the base motor make enough power to take advantage of the airflow that the rec port head had to offer. So that means a big cam. Well, we can't really run a big cam because we don't have enough clearance for the lift. The duration really isn't an issue, not in terms of where the interference is. The duration is only an issue for piston to valve when the piston is moving and the valve is moving. That's not really an issue. Right now, we're only looking at lift. The valve can open up this far before it hits that cylinder bore. So if we have enough clearance, if I can make enough clearance to run like we're at 600 now, and we think that that probably would work, then what happens if we run a 500 lift cam? Like what happens if we run a Truck Norris, an NSR version of the Truck Norris? Quite honestly, I would ask Brian to do a 500 lift cam, like a short track cam, a 500 lift cam that is also, 220, 230, 240, whatever, that has more duration in it, so that it hopefully it would make more power. Now, maybe they can do a low lift version of the hot rod cam or the red hot cam or something like that. and we could see if that could work. But that's a possibility to make this run. And I have a couple of other bores. Well, I have 1, 2, so I have 6 more bores on that aluminum motor that I could ruin to figure out how we would best, whether or not we could actually do this, whether we could just notch the section that needs to be notched, the amount that it needs to be notched, and then run a 500 lift cam on it. So that will be our poll for tonight. Really? 101. There we go. If I can, should I try to notch the bore on the 4.8 and run? I can only put one in there. I can't put plural. I know it needs to be plural because there's more than one. On the 4.8 and run the rec port heads with a low lift cam. So we will start our poll. Because ultimately, if we do that, what I ultimately want to do is do a 4-inch bore 4.8 out of that block. Because again, it's a 4.8 that I don't care about. I hardly ever run it. We did run it with a NSR Truck Norris cam, so it's already in there. So it's like it wants to be in there and run. So it'll be interesting. But I like hearing or I like seeing I'd like seeing your guys' response to this. But I like the idea. I want to run those rec port heads, and I like the idea of getting those on there and hearing the thing run and make, because we, as a test guy, as an engine guy, there's nothing better than putting a motor up on the dyno and hearing it fire up for the first time and having it run and have everything be okay and get to the point where you're like tuning stuff and, hey, look, this is all working out good. Like with the blower thing that I did, that was very, very cool. I also just, and he might be here tonight. I haven't been looking to see who's here, but Church's Automotive, who does lots of good stuff, just hit me up and said that he's got a maybe an LSA motor that might be able to test. So might do some LSA blower testing. So throw out some LSA blower stuff that you that you guys want to see. He has a Magnuson on it, also a 2650, I think. But I asked him if he could get a hold of a factory blower so we could also run that and maybe try to do some testing with that. Run some, I told him we could run cams or different blowers or what, compare the blowers. Not that we don't understand that a 2650 is going to be quite a bit better than a what's the LSA, a 1.9 liter? A 2.65 is better than a 1.9. That's the other thing I want to think about. And I was going to talk about this tomorrow, but if you look at the little AMR 500 blower, that's a half liter. So if we have a whole bunch of those, like, like if we had 6 of those, is that enough to equal a good 3-liter blower? So that's actually probably going to be the poll for tomorrow night. Yep, Richie pulled out the notch block again. I like that thing. I like that display block. Forget the name of the company that makes rec ports that fit the small bore engines. There are a couple of guys that have done it. I bought a 2005 Dodge Ram 1500 Magnum motor 4.7. I think it's not the Hemi. Is it good to tow a trailer with? Say with a 4,000-pound car, the truck has 124,000 miles on it. I don't know much about that motor, but guys if you talk to Admiral or one of the Dodge guys, that they like that and want to see that motor actually run on the dyno. But I don't have any experience with that at all. Yes, but why would you put rec port heads on the 4.8? Exactly. You would do it so that people understand why you should or shouldn't do it. Baby Shark, you got your notification. Good. I'm glad. I wish that YouTube would send out. I don't think it's too hard for a computer to do that. If everybody has, rung the bell and activated the notifications, every time I go live, there should be a notification. That shouldn't be that hard to do. What would happen if a rec port had on a 3900 bore? It won't fit a 3900 bore, I don't think, stock, but it probably would fit one if you notched it. Lower compression even more by clearancing the wall. Yeah, no, it is. It's all bad. I mean, the combustion chamber is bad. It's too big. The gasket that you have to use is too big. Notching it adds more. It's all going toward the bad side. But 315 CFM, that's like the good thing. And it's just like the D-stroke thing. Everybody wants to see it. 1-liter Mafia is in the house. Rec port on the crusty 4.8 iron block you had. The one with the silicone rocker deal. Yeah, it's not going to have that, but obviously not with new heads on it. Stretch the LSA top end. I think the dynamic compression ratio would be an issue. Short stroke, big cam, big head. Well, the dynamic compression is going to be a function of the displacement and the camshaft that we choose. But even knowing that doesn't matter because we're limited in the compression that we can have. I'm not going to change the piston. We're just going to use the thing that we have. And a bigger cam will make more power. Even if it lowers dynamic compression, it will still make more power. Admiral's here. See, Admiral, did you hear the guy talking about the 4.7 Dodge? He wanted to know if it was a good tow motor. So maybe you already answered that. I'm not down to the bottom yet. My AC clutch coil, you're back on that. Did it work? LSA test, LT62 heads on a 4.8. No, we're not going to do that. Brian already did the LT LS thing. LSA is 1.9. That's what I thought. Boost District makes LSA kits for cathedral port heads, uses adapters. Yeah, I've seen those. I have those adapters. In fact, I have both the cathedral to rec port and rec port to cathedral adapters. I think I have both of them still. Admiral's here. We can start the party. I rang the bell and enabled notifications, but I never get any. I wonder what's going on with that. Like to see some LSA testing. My buddy has an LSA blower on a 2013 Hennessy CTSV, the HPE 650 crank package. It ran 1270s, 113. That doesn't seem like a lot. Yeah, the LSA blower is not massive, but I've seen ported versions make a lot of power, though. Wouldn't intake and exhaust flow, I'm sure that's what you mean by CFM, change with large and small bores? Yes, if you flow them, if you flow ahead on different bore sizes, it does change, but it doesn't change it dramatically. You're not going to take a 315 CFM head that we would test on a 4-inch bore anyway and run it on a 3780 bore, and it's not going to go down to 200 CFM. LT4 heads on an LS. They already did LT1 heads, I think, on the LS. Yeah, we don't know unless we test, right? Notch cylinders for valve clearance is the norm in the smaller big bore Chevys. Yeah, we have that from the factory on the 396 that I'm going to run. Jeremy said to fix no notifications, unsubscribe and then resubscribe again, or subscribe again and then redo notifications. You shouldn't have to do that though. Once you notified, it should be all good. Levy, is it Levy or Levi? Levy Racing. 408 smaller port arrives tomorrow. RPM intake 205 VFRs. Biggest street cam. Super excited. You got an FFR Cobra. Oh, that'll be good. A 408 will be fun. Valve shrouding on smaller bores, but they already do 799 heads on the smaller bore. Meek, thank you for subscribing. So Admiral, the 3.7 and the 4.7 are very similar. How's our poll doing? If I can, should I try to notch the bore on the 4.8 and run the rec port heads with a low lift cam? 72% are saying yes. Again, how are polls not 100%? Should I test something? The answer is always yes. 799 and 243 heads are basically the same thing. They're like a 706 and an 862. Yeah, just think if it's a low lift cam, then it'll be ultra stable at high RPM. Have you ever tested the plastic or wooden spacer on the Ford that goes between the two? Yeah, an upper lower spacer. It changes the rudder length a little bit, but I don't think you're going to see a bunch of power. And I also honestly don't think you're going to see a bunch of heat away from the upper like they're promising. It does. They're using it as an isolator, and wood or phenolic is what they use. That they used to use is a pretty good insulator. The problem is that you're insulating it from the lower manifold, but you're not insulating it from all of the engine heat, from all the engine compartment heat. So it's still gonna be really hot, even with spacers, because we ran those on all of them back in the day. Richard, you were right about the octane in New Zealand. That and all that, Jason, all that information came from somebody else, so I was just regurgitating it. 96 is about equal to our 91. Might try 98. And here's the thing. If you're running a motor and you already have enough octane to get to whatever timing your chamber design wants, more octane is not going to do anything. I got those comments all the time, especially on the high compression, like dome piston, small block Chevy things that I ran. They're like, yeah, no, back in the day, we would have 100, 102, 105, 150, whatever octane rating that they were saying that they had back in the day. And it was, leaded octane. You need to run that old gas to have these things make real power. I'm like, no, you don't. You actually don't. All you need to do is have it not detonate, and we run them cold enough where that's not a problem. Have them not detonate with the available octane that you have, and it's going to make the same power. It's not going to change anything unless somehow you put some oxygenated fuel in there. Had former RPM heads on a 60 over 283. It was limited in lift and compression. Were the valves too big for that bore size? Was that the problem? Machine square ports and a cathedral head and use square port manifolds and see if it makes more power, if it can be done. I don't know if I'd have to look at at a drawing of a cathedral port head to see how much material is there. I honestly don't think you would want to do that anyway, but I think you would just be way better off just porting the cathedral port head. You ever try decking a block milling head and assemble it without a gasket? Why would you do that? How could you run it without a head gasket? It's going to leak really bad. And decking a block and milling a head are only going to just raise the compression. About 20, Richard, I've got a Yukon Denali 06 ZL1 blower, 60-pound CTSV injector is what I need to do. I want to do an all-wheel drive burnout. So far, I've been unsuccessful. What gears do you have? What tires do you have? What converter do you have? What transmission do you have? And then what else is done to the motor besides the blower, and how much boost are you running? And what motor did you put the ZL1 on? See, Dan found that the lowest octane that suppressed the knock made the most power. Yeah, the octane thing surprises me. We've done octane tests at West Tech, and it didn't show any power. Unless you're limited unless the octane helps you, add more timing or something. But as long as you can run, like if on an LS, if it's going to make peak power at 29 degrees, if you can run 29 degrees on 91 octane, more octane is not going to help you. Turn cathedral ports into rec ports. Again, I've got some 706 heads that I wouldn't care about ruining. The 32 valve North Star came without head gaskets. Came without head gaskets from the factory. What did they have to seal it? Did they have O-rings or something in it? I'm running race fuel, so it makes more power. That works again if the other octane, if the lower octane stuff limited your amount of timing and or boost if you're running a boosted one. Porsche turbos don't have head gaskets? Don't they have they don't have anything joining the two? But don't they have an interlocking jug or something? Doesn't the head slide into the bore or something? World War II aviation fuel was 130 and later was 150. Yeah, you look at the fuel stuff that they're using during the turbo era of Formula One too, and none of the drivers wanted any of that splashed on them. Q16 makes fuel because it's oxygenated. Yeah, we've run Q16 on a couple of tests. 10 pounds, 6-liter, 91 pump, 373s. Yeah, if you're running pump gas on a blower deal, you're not making the power that you could. If you could have it tuned on E85, it would make a lot more power, because on 91 you're going to have limited timing on that thing. My friend asked me yesterday, cam or turbo for a truck, and I responded both. Yeah. By the way, North Stars had head gaskets. I thought that they did, because I thought that people blew head gaskets on those kind of on the regular. Self-ejecting head gaskets. Yeah, I thought that was a common problem. Porsche turbos have a small taper on the top of the cylinder that mates to the head. No gasket, no O-ring, no nothing. Wow. Twirl 65, Corvette servo. That's the right one. Trans is new as of 2021. Help me do an all-wheel drive burnout. You need to put good fuel in it, and you need to and turn the timing up, and you need to a 373, like a different gear set would help. 410s or something. Put lots of pressure in the tires. Put some oil on them. Not oil, but something. What typical gains you see NA engines pick up with the 85? I don't see any on an LS. If we run, like if I take a 5.3 from the wrecking yard, even one that we've done heads and cam on or whatever, and then I run it on 91, then we put E85 in it doesn't do anything. I mean, it might do a little bit down low, but it doesn't do anything to the peak power. On boosted stuff, it does a lot. And it seems to do something on Gen 5 LT motors and on Coyotes. But I've tried it also on small block Chevys and stuff too. And again, only on the boosted stuff am I seeing any kind of power change. DSauce, your configuration for cylinder heads would be, in my opinion, would be less about the cylinder head than it would be about the intake manifold. There's a YouTube channel called Build It Yourself. I'm familiar with those guys. Yeah, I reached out to them about testing that motor that they're putting together. Seems like the big head swirl get bumped. Should I try? Exactly. I have 7 block or bore at 3905. If you're asking me which one of those you should do, you would be better off boring a iron block to 3905 rather than using an aluminum 5.7 block. Our poll has jumped down to 67% on the yes side. So it's 2/3 yes and 1/3 no. Shame on you guys. It should all be yes. Dan, I've never seen that actually. They use different thickness head gaskets to tune before leaving the pits. You ever done any work with small bore square ports? I did some with. I tried some mast heads way back that were small bore square ports, but not like this. Not for a 4.8 or a 5.3. What would be your ideal race setup for an NBS GMT 800 Suburban? Is that a really, really big vehicle that you need lots of motor in? You know, some sort of twin turbo thing would make Hellcat power. Richard, have you ever messed with a Coates head, the rotary valve one? I remember seeing it at SEMA for a number of years. We used to go look at it and wonder about it. The last Windsor produced in the USA was 95-ish. I think in the trucks it went longer than that. '97 to '96 in the trucks. Yeah, double overhead cam V10 would be cool. I hope they get it. I hope they get it running. I can't imagine sealing the heads has got to be a problem. If you run a comparison on a carb style EFI setup versus a stock LS intake manifold. So you have to be specific about which intake manifold that you're talking about. But yes, I have. I'd like to try E85. E85 on a boosted motor is, it really likes it. It's like running a ice for your intercooler. Seems like an exhaust intake heads respond better to the same amount of port work. I don't know why the port would care what's next to it to respond or not respond to port work. Oh, 2001. Yeah, the not 351s, but the 302s, they had the 5 liters in the Explorers, right? Every modern performance engine uses EIEIO. The thing that I don't like about the Siamese port stuff is I don't like it on the intake and I don't like it on the exhaust because it makes, like I said, on the intake side, it makes for funny length intake ports. And then on the exhaust side, it makes it's one of the reasons I don't like small wet Chevy header stuff is the I don't and Dodges are like that too. I just don't like the header configuration. I like the Ford header configuration much better, where it's a symmetrical port where there's spacing between all of them, and then there's access to bolt holes and stuff. A Ford small block is kind of a pain for headers too, but the The LS is nice. 317s versus 799s. Which one would you choose for what? You got to tell me what you're doing. A 799 will make more power than a 317 if you just put a stock head on something. Put those two stock heads on something. A 799 is going to make more power. (2001) Explorer in the US and Australia in 2002. Did they sell the Explorer in Australia? Or just that 5-liter motor in something else? And that mod motor phased in early too, like way before it did on the Mustang. It was in full-size stuff way before that. Somebody was telling me last night that I got some haters on the on the 5.3 all motor thing. It surprises me that people go out of their way to and in some of the cases to just conjure up like made up situations and then complain about those situations. I don't know why people need to go out of their way. It's just don't watch it. It's real simple. If you're all about boost, then go do that. Best junkyard LS based engine with C head. What's a C head? Heads and cams, stock short block strictly from a power standpoint that could be street driven. I don't know what you're asking. The Exploder or low volume stuff, but Falcons had 5 liters for a long time before the Boss engine took over. Yeah, 91. The green screen. I use that for doing regular videos because then I can put images up behind me when I'm talking. Coolant will boil between the center exhaust ports on the small block Chevy. Yeah. Would you ditch an LSA blower for a turbo setup on a heavy vehicle to make more power? If that's what you wanted, you are limited in power on an LSA blower. And for any given boost level on an LSA blower, and the higher that you go, the bigger the difference. So if let's say that you were trying to run, for some reason, you were trying to run 20 pounds on an LSA blower. I don't know if that's even possible on modified motors where they make a lot of power already. The difference between an LSA blower running very high boost and a turbo running that boost level could be a couple hundred horsepower. It'd be a lot. So you want to know what is the best LS from the wrecking yard to make power? Is that what you're asking? Then it would just be whatever the most powerful factory LS that you could find is. You're not going to find you're not going to find an LS9. You're not going to find an LS7, but one of those would be the most powerful. So what would the capacity work out on a 4.8 with a big bore? It depends on what size we went on the bore, but you can go to Wallace Racing and put the specs in. We had to put a coolant pipe between the exhaust ports to keep the water from boiling. Did you have an external pipe drilled into the head, Dan? Wheelbase getting late on the conversation, but I just don't think a 4.8 needs the airflow of the rec port heads. And if it needed more, I just think port the 706s. I agree with that sentiment. I mean, that doesn't stop everybody, and including me, from wanting to make them work and run on the motor, but we got to show that, right? Oldsmobiles get really hot on the center exhaust. Don't the Pontiacs have the later ones maybe have an exhaust manifold that has where they combine the two exhausts into a single one in the middle? I thought that I saw exhaust manifolds like that. Well, I used to big block Buick heads with that configuration. Don't know if that makes much of a difference. Power up for the 5.3 LS all motor is pretty impressive compared to the Gen 1 roller. Yeah, it is good. It made good power. I mean, it as soon as you do that and you're like, oh yeah, all I do is bolt that stuff on a junkyard motor. Right? Why? Let's try to make some real power now. I assume a 6.2. Again, you're going to a wrecking yard and finding a 6.2 aluminum motor like an LS3 or something would be, for me, we don't see that. I have lots of 6.2 videos up. Basically, I'm asking how much horsepower could you make with a factory heads and a cam only? Well, if you're carbing it, you would be changing the intake as well. But I have lots of cam only LS3 videos up, which that's what a 6.2 is. And you can be in the mid to high 500s with just a cam and springs. You're going to hurt power by going to a carbureted intake manifold, although you may add some peak power past the normal power peak with a factory intake manifold. You can take a look at the LS3 intake test and see what I'm talking about. Under driving the pulley, the max you get is 15 to 18 pounds. That's a big spread. I think you just convinced me to go turbo. Worry about the torque off the line. Yeah, a blower is nice for that, so that you can never have all of everything. You always have to sacrifice one thing for the other. Will a stock 4L60 handle a 6-liter? I don't know. Old Chevys did 2-into-1 join up. 4L60s can't handle stock 5.3s. They can't handle a light breeze. Pipe fitting in the head. Pipes went back around to the water pump. Okay. Dan, did you guys try reverse cooling on the race motors that you were doing? Did you try doing the heads first? Richard, what kind of max intake air temperature would you consider acceptable on a positive displacement blower? I would want it to be as low as possible. I would want it to be low 100s after the intercooler. Mega, what's the best intake for a 5.3? You are ultimately the one that can decide that, especially and the same thing for a camshaft, because you ultimately are going to decide where you want to make power, and that's what an intake manifold is going to do. Take a look at the big intake test that I did, and you just scale everything down. But for something that's 7,000 and below, a fast manifold is probably the best combination of average and peak and torque production. But it's not cheap, though. Your 2.4 inline 4-cylinder heard of 4L60? Yeah, special agent. That's a good point. He wants to put 410s in it. That would help you're adding mechanical advantage, so it help the transmission live a little longer, maybe. Lots of 6.2 Escalade engines around my area for a fair price. That's why I was asking. LS Engine, Building King. Yeah, I wish that we could find 6.2s. I would definitely go get one of those. The bigger it is, the better it is, and the more power it's going to make. Man, I would love to go to the wrecking yard and see just 6.2s as far as the eye can see, all for $350 or something. A question for my 462 valve. Where can I find a better intake manifold for my town car? Plastic keeps cracking on me. Didn't they make one that has like aluminum inserts or something in it? Michelangelo, just throw your combination up there. We never did reverse cooling, but I suppose other people did. I just was curious. Cold cylinder heads, they seem to like that for power. Yeah, and every time I see an Escalade at the junkyard, the motor's gone in 30 seconds. Yeah, as soon as the forklift drops it down, it takes the engine out with it and puts it in somebody's car. I thought I found every Panther 4.6 is plastic. I know this might be a bit off topic. Actually, it's not, because I have a 5-liter. I looked into the cost of putting a 5-liter Windsor and T5 into my car. It's actually cheaper to put an LS1 and a T56 in it. Could you mate the 5-liter to the T56? Do you see high maintenance using solid lifters in an LS3? I see zero reason to ever run solid lifters on an LS3. Given the RPM potential of a hydraulic roller lifter, I don't know why you'd use solids on it. Can you overbore the LC9? I think so. Somebody might chime in. I thought that all of the aluminum blocks that you could go to 3,900 or so, but somebody chimed in on one of the other live feeds that they were not all the same. What bore and stroke would you feel comfortable with for a Gen 4 6-liter? We normally don't go more than making them a 408, which is 30 over and then a 4-inch stroke. That's good. I like that. That's points for that. They shake the Escalade off of the engine. That's right. Just get rid of all this garbage and take out the thing that we really like. To make bigger power, the 4.8 needs compression. If you run a rec port head, it'll need a 60cc chamber. Yeah, you're not going to find a 60cc chamber rec port head. Would also be cammed to make power to 8,000 RPM. Yeah, none of that is going to happen. As an aside, I really appreciate the effort to create the visual graphic demonstration on the cutaway engine. I like that cutaway engine. It took a while to get that done, but it was pretty cool. Camshaft, Lingenfelter 227, 235. Okay. 614, 621, 115, 5.3 flat tops. Okay. So is there a question in there? All that looks fine. TK, the correction factor would control what the dyno reads or what the dyno displays. Not what it reads. The actual power and then the corrected power are different. So the actual power that the motor makes at that day in that location with that weather that you happen to have that day, because you can have a dramatic change. You can have 105 or 110 degree day, and then you can also have a 25 or 30 degree day, let's say. The difference that you might see in cold winter to hot summer, the motor is going to make different power for both of those, and it would also make different power at different elevations also. But what they do then is correct to that, and we've talked about that before. Their correction that they're doing is for an NA motor, and it becomes problematic when you put boosted stuff on there because they're not correcting it correctly. Correcting it correctly. Will the Mustang aftermarket intake work? I thought the Dorman or somebody did one to take care of that problem, that the plastic stuff was being a problem, and that they put some sort of aluminum inserts in there to make it better. It's been a long time since I worked on a 2-valve motor, though. So Hennessy Venom, they're impressive, aren't they? Five 3 flat top pistons, yeah. Are you asking if that cam will work with flat top pistons? Because it will. A 227 cam will work with flat top pistons. You could get a different bell housing to suit a Ford Windsor, but the cost is going to shoot up quickly versus OEM parts. 62 is available in the Rust Belt. Probably not a complete fender or bedside inside. I know. I was talking to the guys in Ohio about getting a bunch of truck body parts and then going back and then swapping those for engine parts, and then with 212, 222, 115 cam on a 6-liter work with a factory ECU well enough to drive 3 miles down the road. Yes. 243 ported heads and 6-speed standard. Can I examine 7 minutes? Good luck. See, but your brain's all stimulated now. Thanks, Richard. People are telling me their supercharged intake temps for around 110 degrees. Where are they taking that? Is that under the blower or something? That's a normal cruise temperature. But the thing is, when you go to wide open throttle, you get a blast of cold air going in there because you got more cold air coming in through the intercooler. And so you might see it drop initially, which is what we see on the dyno, and then it will go up. Think about the business aspect of the junkyard LS engines. When the junkyard engines reach Finland, they're being sold anywhere from 1,500 to 4,000. What is that? What is the currency for Finland? If you're around an LY6 VVT cam with a VVT phaser removed and just a single bolt timing gear, the camshaft I don't think will bolt on to a single bolt gear, because I think isn't the nose of the VVT cam weird? I think it is. I could go back and look and see, I guess. Look at all my LY6 stuff, but I didn't think you could put a regular thing on it. Let's see. Yeah, it is. It's completely different. That cam won't accept a regular cam bolt. keep hearing the arguments that 2650 blowers are better than twin screws. I personally run a Whipple, but there are recent tests showing each that a roots blower is not as good as a twin screw. The particular blower that you're running might be better than a particular twin screw if tested in a particular manner. But a twin screw by design is more efficient. The right twin screw is more efficient than a roots blower. Even this hybrid roots blower that they're trying to get closer and closer to a twin screw. Because if you look at what they've done, they've twisted the lobes on it to make it like a twin screw because they know that that's more efficient. And every SAE paper ever written about superchargers will tell you that roots blowers are not as efficient as twin screw blowers. And again, people can argue about that all that they want, because I've had people tell me that, well, twin screw blowers aren't good because they compress the air inside. I'm like, yeah, that's called internal compression. That's actually one of the signs of them being more efficient and being superior. No, that's just too hot. I'm like, okay, well, I'm talking to the wrong person then. Will an LS3 cam work on a Gen 3? Yes, but the LS3, the factory LS3 cam does not have a rear cam sensor on it though. So you'd have to put a front cam sensor on it and then extend the wires to run a front cam sensor. And that's a way more work than that camshaft is worth. IFR was doing plastic intakes with brass inserts. Yeah, the guys at Westech had tested a bunch of their composite intake manifolds. Tune said to start pulling timing at 135 degrees. Okay. Wisconsin's in the house. I've been there. Elkhart Lake, one of my favorite tracks. Beautiful country there too. Finland's a euro. Is that what it is? The sign after the price is a euro. Okay. Be interested in seeing a test of self-learning EFI versus your tuning to see how much power is left on the table for a guy that doesn't want to tune himself. If somebody is able to set up a learn table and put in the right values, and then the computer does that and gives you those values, there shouldn't be any power left. Whether or not all of that happens with a self-tuning computer, because I remember when those came out, when the closed loop aspect of this came out, that there were a couple of people that came into Westech and they were telling Eric and I think Ernie and stuff and Tom at the time that this is going to put tuners out of business. We aren't going to need tuners anymore. This is going to do all that. And it hasn't done that because those don't always do that. A VVT, my Silverado, and I like it. Yeah, factory stuff, it works good as long as it doesn't stop working, as long as it doesn't get clogged up and stuff. Remember when the NHRA, that's a good example. Remember when the NHRA banned twin screw blowers and top fuel? Yeah, they were that good. Yeah. All the Roots guys were up in arms about that. Don't they, Dan, don't they allow the alcohol guys to run twin screws? A Roots blower, typically, if you look at the blower dyno stuff that I've seen, a Roots blower, and again, we can't talk about all Roots blowers do one thing and all twin screws do the other, because there are some twin screws, some of the Whipples that I've seen, some of the data that I've seen on those, when you spin them up really high, the temperature goes way up, the parasitic loss goes way up. There are certain things that you need to look at, particular design elements of different types of blowers. But when you look at them, the twin screw has less parasitic loss to drive the blower, and it has a lower charge temperature. Factory GT500 is a roots blower. .8 with 64 cc heads, and a 51 head gasket only has 9.1 to 1 compression. A no 41 gasket might bring it up to 9.3. Yeah, and are you going to be able to get are you still talking about the rec port head thing? You're going to be able to get a rec port head down to 64? How fast do you think an S480 will come up on boost with a 4.8 and a BTR torque cam? I think I ran that combination, but when I ran it, I know that we did, but we ran a T4 S480, and we also ran a torque cam, but with a high ram intake manifold, because I was showing how to do things that you shouldn't do. I'd have to go back and look and see, but on an engine dyno, we're getting an artificial kind of load. Michael, what's up? Putting the Turbo 3800 in the Fiero this weekend. Nice. Send me some pictures of it. They don't self-tune everything. Yeah, that's true. Because I did the self-tune. We wanted to see if it worked, and way back when MSD had their wired less, everyone thought, "Oh, wireless tuning, this is going to be awesome." What is it, a FM receiver or something? No, it's wired less, meaning that they had tucked all the wires, and it looked like there were less wires. But we ran it under closed loop with a turbo motor. It was an LS3. It was mine. We put a turbo on it, ran it 7 pounds, and we just went to wide open throttle. But it didn't self-tune timing though, so we put timing values in it, and we were fairly conservative on our timing. The EFI TBIs don't like lumpy cams. Yeah, those computers certainly don't. They didn't have to worry about belt slippage with those pulleys on there, Dan? They're cog bolt pulleys, I know, but top fuel runs 55 pounds with big blowers on them. Two more minutes. We're going to close out our pull at 69%, 69.31. So it climbed up a little bit better than 2/3, 1/3. I'm liking it. I'm feeling it. I'm loving it. Bob, you're tuning a 4.7 inline 6-cylinder Jeep Stroker. Okay. Stock timing for a 4.2. Advance shows all the mechanical timing advances in by 2000. We don't normally put all the timing in by 2000. That seems like a lot. M90 5th gen map shows a 60% island. Yeah, and even if you can get the blower to be in whatever adiabatic efficiency rating that they're going to give it, it's not going to make the same temperature as a turbo is, and it's not going to make the same power because it also has parasitic loss. The twin screw is usually going to be better than a roots blower. I want to see a positive displacement blower with a huge turbo on a 4.8. Why don't the LS motors get really lumpy? Have you ever run one with a really big camshaft in it? I noticed a significant difference switching from a Magnuson to Whipple. And again, it would depend on it depends on what displacement blowers you're switching to and from, and then also what the pulley ratios are because of the speed that you're running it. Andrew, I've never seen anything in the 60 to 80 range, even under cruise, which would be the highest timing. So I don't know if that's a relative number with something else added to it. 1,000 horsepower to turn the 1471. Did they coat the lobes on those, or do they just strip those blowers on the top fuel stuff? Yeah, that seems like a lot. I've never seen anything with that kind of number in it. Normally, timing, even under cruise, could be 45 or 50, maybe. Under light cruise while you're cruising down the road, but at wide open throttle, it's going to be like we said, it's going to be in the, I don't know what motor that is, but it could be 30 or less. Well, I've seen them strip the blowers, and even then some teams just swap blowers if the seals are wear out. Yeah, I don't think that they have a long life for the strips. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow. I'm thinking tomorrow might be the little AMR blower. I'm very excited about it, so I'm going to start working on that because there's a lot of video on that AMR blower and a lot of data, which will be very, very cool for everybody. So thanks for showing up, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. Bam, bam, bam.